The DJI Air 2S, the Mavic 3 and the Autel Evo 2 Pro are arguably the three hottest drones right now on the market. So if you're looking for a comparison video that will hopefully help you decide which one should you buy, this one is the video for you. Alright, so we have quite a lot of information to cover, so make sure you check the timestamps if you want to quickly jump to a specific part of the video. Starting off with the size and weight. The Autel Evo 2 Pro is definitely the biggest drone out of these three, and it's also the heaviest. Coming in at 1191 grams, the Autel Evo 2 Pro definitely feels very solid in your hand and is, I would say, not very portable. It takes a solid amount of space in your backpack compared to the Air 2S and the Mavic 3. The Air 2S weighs just under 600 grams, whereas the Mavic 3 weighs just under 900 grams. Obviously, one of the most important features of these drones is their camera. So now let's dig deeper into their specs and see which one shoots what. Starting off with the DJI Air 2S, which has a 1-inch sensor with a 22mm lens and a fixed aperture of 2.8. This drone shoots video at 5.4K at 30 frames per second, 4K at 60 frames per second, and 1080p at 120 frames per second. The bitrate of the Air 2S is 150 megabits per second, and it has three different color profile options: D-Log, HLG, and normal. On the other hand, we have the Mavic 3, which comes with 4/3 sensor with a 24mm lens, a variable aperture between f2.8 and f11, 5.1K at 50 frames per second, 4K at 120 frames per second, and 1080p at 200 frames per second at 200 megabits per second. It currently offers D-Log and a normal color profile, and it has a second camera. The second camera has a 1/2-inch sensor with a 162mm lens with a fixed aperture of f4.4. It offers 28 times digital zoom, and it records only in automatic camera settings, not giving you the option to shoot RAW photos. The telephoto camera shoots in 4K 30 frames per second and 1080p 30 frames per second. Finally, we have the Autel Evo 2 Pro, which comes with a 1-inch sensor, a 28mm lens, a variable aperture between f2.8 and f11, the same as the Mavic 3, and it shoots in fake 6K, which is exactly the same resolution as the one that we have on the Air 2S, which is 5.4K. It's not 6K, it's 5.4. So the video that you can shoot on this drone is 5.4K at 30 frames per second, 4K at 60 frames per second, and 2.7K at 120 frames per second at 120 megabits per second. The drone gives you the chance to use a couple of different color profiles, but the most important ones are the normal one and the log color profile. One thing that I can say about all of these three drones is that they all have superb video quality. However, you can see that on the Autel Evo 2 Pro there is a slight blue tint in the footage itself, which you can easily correct when you start grading your footage. And something that I really dislike about the Autel Evo 2 Pro is the fact that it always overexposes the highlights. Especially if you shoot something like the waves of the sea, for example, you definitely see that they are overexposed. And even if you shoot in automatic camera settings, the drone does the same thing, so you'll have to take that into consideration. Always underexpose the highlights a little bit so they are not blown out. In these tests, I've decided to use only automatic camera settings. I've set the white balance, the aperture, the shutter speed, everything was set to auto, so you can see how these drones use their brains to give you that specific image. Of course, you can always use ND filters and manual camera settings if you want to enhance the look of your image, and that's something that I highly encourage you to do. However, for this test, I decided to let them be and just use automatic camera settings so we can see how well they're going to perform. In terms of flight range, we have a very clear winner. Obviously, the newest drone is going to perform the best, which is the Mavic 3, which gives you a rough flight distance of up to 15 kilometers, whereas the Air 2S gives you up to 12 kilometers and the Evo 2 Pro gives you up to 9 kilometers of flight range. Now let's talk about the battery life. Obviously, the bigger drone will have advantage because they have bigger batteries. However, the Autel Evo 2 Pro is not the winner here. The Mavic 3 gives you a flight time of up to 46 minutes, which of course you won't be able to ever reproduce. However, it's still very, very impressive. The Autel Evo 2 Pro, on the other hand, gives you a maximum flight time of up to 40 minutes, whereas the Air 2S is capable of up to 31 minutes. We can't go any further without mentioning these right here. These are the remote controllers of these drones, and I really like the one from the Autel Evo 2 Pro, mostly because it has a built-in screen which is also colorful, and it gives you a lot of information and telemetry about your flight, and that's something that I honestly miss quite a lot on the remote controllers, both on the Air 2S and the Mavic 3. Yes, I do like them and they're very comfortable in the hand. At first I didn't really like that shape. Now I love it. I actually feel like it's very, very well thought out. It is perfect fit in your hands. However, I would have loved to have a tiny screen, for example, right here in the middle, where you can see some of your basic telemetry about your flight, some information that you might need instead of always looking at your phone. Now, of course, DJI has made their RC Pro, which is a lot more expensive than these right here, and it has kind of that premium feeling that this one definitely lacks. However, for a professional drone like the Mavic 3, I would have loved to see a new remote controller instead of using the exact same one that we've seen on the Air 2 and the Air 2S. Now that I've mentioned the price, it really is one of the most important aspects when it comes to deciding which one you want to pick up. And the price difference we have between all of these three is quite impressive. Starting off with the Air 2S, which comes at a base price of $999, I honestly feel like this is cheap for what you're getting. Of course, that's just the base price, so the second you start thinking about more batteries or the Fly More combo, which comes with more batteries and the filters and some more accessories, it gets more expensive. The base price of the Autel Evo 2 Pro is $795, which I believe is quite steep for this drone. However, we need to keep in mind that this drone is almost 2 years old and it still has one of the best cameras out there. So it is a nice middle ground between the Air 2S and the Mavic 3, so if you're looking for something that has a little bit more quality than the Air 2S, but it's not super expensive as the Mavic 3, that might be the way to go. And jumping to the Mavic 3, it has a base price of $2,199, so $2,200 for just the basic package of the Mavic 3. If you want to get more out of this drone and you want to get the Fly More combo or even the Cine combo, which is ridiculously expensive with a built-in 1TB SSD memory and the ProRes codec available on it, it's definitely very, very expensive. If you're a pro user and you're looking to upgrade to a nice drone that's going to be your main workhorse, which is going to give you a ton of opportunities to shoot for your clients, for work, and basically earn money out of it, it is a solid choice. However, it's not for the everyday consumer. Now that we've talked about all the main characteristics of these drones, I want to give you guys my honest impressions after using these drones for a while and things that I've encountered, both pros and cons about them. Starting off with the Mavic 3, which honestly I've used the least out of the three. However, I still think this one is probably one of the best drones right now on the market. It is incredibly smooth, it records amazing footage during the day. During the night, not so much. And if you want to see more of what it's capable of against the Autel Evo 2 Pro, check my latest video. It is very interesting to see. However, it is very, very expensive. And I honestly think it's not twice as good as the Air 2S. Coming from the fact that it is more than twice more expensive than the Air 2S. In addition, this drone has been released while it's still not finished. This drone lacks all intelligent flight modes. It doesn't have even one intelligent flight mode. It doesn't have active track. It doesn't have quick shots. It doesn't have master shots. It doesn't even have panoramic photos. There's no way not to mention the second camera of this drone either. I think it's mostly a gimmick. It is usable for some scenarios, but for the most part, it's not something that you will take a lot of usage out of. Contrary to the Mavic 2 Zoom, for example, which had a really impressive zoom camera, here you have a lot of digital zoom, you have 28 times zoom, but what can you do with the zoom? Is it going to be something that you use every single time when you fly? I don't think so. And especially when you notice how much the quality decreases the second you start using this telephoto camera, I think it's not something that should be present on such an expensive drone. Now, the Autel Evo 2 Pro has a lot of pros. The first one and the most important one is the fact that it has no no-fly zones. This is honestly a lifesaver because, as we all know, DJI sometimes have these no-fly zones which are definitely not correct. Sometimes you cannot unlock these zones. I've been in many situations where I know I can definitely fly on this specific place. However, the DJI application does not let me even take off. So this is not present on the Autel Evo 2 Pro. Of course, you still need to be aware where you can fly, where you cannot fly. But with this drone, you can take off even on an airport. It won't be a problem. So it is a lifesaver sometimes when you have some problems with your DJI drone. You can use the Autel to avoid that. It is something that I really like about this drone, let's be honest. In addition, I really like the dynamic range of this drone. The log color profile gives you so much flexibility to color grade your footage, and the fact that it gives you some blue tint in your footage is very easy to fix in post. And most recently I noticed how much better it is, in my opinion at least, compared to the Mavic 3 at night. It has some built-in noise reduction capabilities which are going to make your footage look very impressive straight out of the SD card. I think the biggest problem of the Autel Evo 2 Pro is the fact that it's quite bulky and heavy. It is very bad at tracking you. I've done a test where I wanted to use Active Track to film myself while I was riding my bike. It was a disaster. And generally, I think the software side of the Autel drones could be very much improved, because right now it definitely lacks some quality. It's very different in a bad way compared to the DJI software, which of course has a lot more people working on it. However, I don't think that's a really solid excuse, because the Autel company is still one of the biggest companies that make drones for consumers, and I think the software side should be improved for sure. And finally, we need to address the Air 2S, which is where I have my biggest problem. And my biggest problem is the fact that I just like this drone too much. There is really not much that I can say about it in terms of a con. Probably the fact that it has a fixed aperture, that might be the worst thing about this drone, but other than that, I feel like it should be the go-to drone for anyone looking to buy a very high quality drone which has impressive video, great photo capabilities, great intelligent flight modes, a lot of flight time. It has D-Log, so you can shoot in flat and just color grade your footage afterwards and do a lot with it. It is not ideal to shoot in nighttime. Yes, that's true. However, for any other scenario that they can think of, the Air 2S is the perfect drone. You can buy two base models of the Air 2S and it will still be cheaper than the base model of the Mavic 3. And I don't think the Mavic 3 is 2 times better than the Air 2S. So to sum everything up, I think the Mavic 3 would be ideal for someone who is really pixel peeping, really looking to get the most out of their drone. However, it's not for the everyday consumer. The Evo 2 Pro is for someone who is not a huge fan of DJI and is looking to escape from that ecosystem while having a lot of quality, a lot of smoothness, and most importantly, no-fly zones. The Air 2S seems like the perfect synergy between power, performance, and price. So which one fits you the most? Let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. This is Mike from Drone Supremacy. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a pleasure. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.